problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds.
Welcome to Sarah's Country, to our most far-reaching audience members around the globe, from our headquarters, our home, broadcasting at the base of Banks Peninsula in New Zealand, utilising every little piece of technology that we have at our disposal to ensure that no one is left behind in our mission to position Aotearoa New Zealand as an inspiration to the world in producing food and fibre in harmony with nature. And on that, nature hasn't been very much at harmony with the people of the East Coast around Hawke's Bay over the past 24 hours, with the second wettest day on record since records began in 1870, flooding streets, closing schools, leading to a state of emergency. This is the same region that declared drought only 6 months ago. Producing food and fibre in harmony with nature requires everybody at the table to navigate collectively to overcome these external impacts we all share. Now, if COVID-19 has taught our country anything, it is that there's a hand that feeds you and the hand needs the muscle to hold it out. If you're new to Sarah's Country, nā mai, haere mai, and welcome to a super amazing community of live viewers and listeners on demand that I'm so honoured to show up 3 nights a week with my fantastic team and in alliance with the fabulously generous team at Farmers Weekly, who deliver the in-depth stories for this show. They have allowed me to be the change that I want to see in this world. And change, it's inevitable, right? We hear that all the time. Staying still is to go backwards, that's another one. But as I get older, I can totally understand. It's nice to get comfortable, isn't it? In routine, alleviate the stresses and anxieties of having to think. But our farming community is being guided forward, as they like to think, by our government to move in a direction that we are being told is to meet the demands of our consumers and involves change. Dealing with change is not only scary, but frustrating when there's no clear signposted goals, right? Well, one thing I've learned from this collaborative media format that we've created around Sarah's Country is that change is less scary when we're in a community. And you see, the boom of action groups and catchment groups, communities coming together around a common problem is a here and now thing and here for the future. So if you find yourself stuck, going around in circles, lacking creativity to solve a problem, think, well, have I got the right circle around me to bounce forward with? Because that is the definition of resilience. If you're heading along to the Farmlands Ag Fest this Friday and Saturday at the Greymouth Aerodrome, then this is my personal invitation to come along and join me and many experienced guests in the Farmlands tent from 11:30 and then again at 3 o'clock in our seminar series, where you can join the conversation off air, live in person, on dealing with change and the advice on the season ahead from the Farmlands technical and growth and innovation teams. I'm really looking forward to the panel guests that we've pulled together for you, not only on what the freshwater regulations mean with the likes of Kate Scott from LandPro, and if you follow Sarah's Country, you'll know she knows what she's talking about, to the team from Figit on how on earth to begin to quantify the costs into your farm budget. As well as Ford have given me somewhere to park up, a new Ranger parked right outside the front tent that you'll fall over if you miss it. Between 1 and 3 o'clock, I'd love you to come down, jump in the front seat with me, one-on-one, doors closed, and let's have a yarn. What's keeping you awake at night? Whether it's Ian Foster's coaching or how you can't possibly get your head around these pugging rules. I'd rather be on the ground meeting you all in person than in a studio any day. So please come up and say good day if you are at the Farmlands Ag Fest this Friday and Saturday. Tonight in the comments, I thought what a wonderful way to celebrate the West Coast of New Zealand, where the Ag Fest is. What is one thing that you love doing on the coast? If you're from the coast, any special tips? If you visit often, What is a great place to go to? And it's a special last frontier, isn't it? But a forward-thinking attitude. These coasters deserve the respect, of course, from their farming practices over there and their absolute love for nature and farming in harmony with it. I absolutely love the West Coast. My mum is in South Westland farming there, and the community you can't beat at all. Absolutely beautiful. I grew up whitebaiting on the West Coast, and of course exploring jet boating and tramping the bush and riding horses on the beach. Absolutely incredible part of this country. I want to hear, what do you love about the West Coast of New Zealand as we walk in to the closing of this week into AgFest, Friday and Saturday. Tonight on the show, why is it so hard to recruit people into the dairy industry? Just absolutely blows my mind. DairyNZ's GoDairy campaign has been scrapped after 720. Chris Lewis from Federated Farmers. I would like to talk to him about this, but also too, following on from Roger Parton's interview yesterday around the quarantine pressures on our critical workflow. Federated Farmers employment spokesperson Chris is as well. You'll remember July 2019, New Zealand farmers. Angus Robertson launched a campaign against the practice of winter grazing, this is where cattle are strip fed on a crop. Minister O'Connor then went on to appoint Angus and the activist, as well as 15 other industry representatives, onto a winter grazing action group. Where has that got to? I want to know, and I know that you will as well, as they are put out short-term expected outcomes for animal welfare. After 7:30, the chair of this group, Lindsay Burton, outlays what these expected outcomes are and where regulation may come into the future. To close the show, Open Farms project founder Daniel Ebb explains the success in March of Open Farms, reconnecting urban and rural through farmers nationwide opening their gates, and how the Open Farm Day concept is set to return in 2021. Also want to sneak in some questions around Daniel's massive year ahead as well, announced as a Nuffield Scholar just recently in Parliament. But firstly, how do we drive change on remote farms, such as in the Chatham Islands? Ruby Mulinder, Red Meat Profit Partnership Network Facilitator, shares her learnings from the Action Group Extension Program on the remote island off the coast of New Zealand very shortly here on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
Delicious. Ever wondered where it starts? Does it start with care? Respect. Fresh grass, 365 days a year. The truth is, delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
For those who have just joined us, kia ora and welcome tonight to Sarah's Country. The theme on the comments below is I want to celebrate the West Coast, and this is, of course, Farmlands Ag Fest is on Friday and Saturday. I'm heading over with a great team and looking forward to being a part of the Farmland Seminar Series where we're talking about dealing with change. Personally invited to pop along on Friday and Saturday, but I want to celebrate all those beautiful, honestly, some of the postcard photography that you see representing New Zealand is from the west coast of New Zealand. I mean, you think of Lake Matheson. It is a postcard, absolutely beautiful, as well as, of course, around Franz Josef and the Fox Glacier. You can't beat the photography around snow landings up there on those glaciers. I was looking through here, some of the top sites in the West Coast, and I had a bit of a laugh. And I shouldn't laugh because of COVID being probably bringing us back to our roots. But my parents went on their honeymoon to Shantytown on the west coast. And I tell you what, if you haven't been to Shantytown, it's definitely worth a visit. This day and age, in my generation, Shantytown's probably not somewhere that you'd think. It's a 1960s old original gold mine where you can live and breathe and feel like you're a part of it. However, with the inability to go to the Cook Islands or Tahiti, we might have to experience the likes of Shantytown. I want to know, if you are listening around New Zealand and around the world, share with me what you absolutely love about the West Coast. Not only tourist places, but also to some of those really cool, unique experiences, like the Paringa races. And I mean, we had the duck Pluckers Ball, the Whitebaiters Ball in Haast. You know, tell me about some of those really unique events. The Wild Food Festival. Let's celebrate the West Coast here tonight, because we are talking about some pretty far-flung places. And as I just get the signal that our next guest is connected, we are going to talk about, firstly on the show, in Farmers Weekly's Pulpit. This is the opinion section where every man and her dog can write in around opinions. And Ruby Mulinder explains in this week's Farmers Weekly how it all started when she woke at 2 a.m. thinking, have farmers on our most remote islands had the opportunity to benefit from one of our most effective extension programs? This is the Red Meat Profit Partnership Action Network. And as a facilitator for over a year and a half based in South Waikato, Ruby began to think about her family's farming contacts in the Chatham Islands, how she could extend the ability to come together in a community to deal with change and deal with challenges. And Ruby joins us now. I'm really excited to talk about this, Ruby. Firstly, can you just give us a little bit of background that led into taking your knowledge remotely over to the Chathams?
Yeah, hi Sarah. Great to speak with you this afternoon. Yeah, so I actually work in the South Waikato as a farm life consultant, and during that journey I've come across the Red Meat Profit Partnership extension program, and with that came some opportunities to facilitate groups in different locations around New Zealand. So I facilitated one in the South Waikato, one down in Canterbury, and then, ultimately one day sort of thought, I wonder if the Chathams had the opportunity to look at this funding network. And lucky enough, my mother had actually nursed on the Chathams for a time frame when we were little children, and we were fortunate enough to have a contact. So I randomly picked up the phone one day and gave them a call. And from there it was history. We managed to get it over the line and get a few good, productive visits under our belt.
I love the line in this Pulpit opinion piece that you can read in this week's Farmers Weekly. It is an island of character, and you're bound to feel as withered as one of the wind-swept trees. I mean, they are hard as nails as people, but how open were they to what you had to say and bring to the discussion?
Yeah, fairly interesting actually. So as a group of farmers, we managed to pull together 9 farming businesses to be involved in the network group. I think to start with, they really appreciate you taking the time to gain the true context of what the challenges are on the island. We're not dealing with mainstream New Zealand farming. We can't just pick up the phone and ring a truck driver to collect stock when we get dry. We can't have someone coming and doing baleage at the drop of a hat. So there are a lot of challenges there around how they just operate day to day. So as a group, I think once you understand what the challenges are, from that point on, it's actually been really positive, and there's just such a great group of fairly positive farmers over there.
And one of them is low pH levels, as low as 4.4, you say, because of the clay and peat soil. So how did you take a challenge like that and find an opportunity?
Yeah, so that was a little bit, those sort of outcomes came in our first meeting, when we were trying to get a bit of a scope of what we would like to focus on as a group and what the group wanted to sort of challenge as we sort of progressed. So that came out when I got them to bring along some soil tests. I was quite keen just to get an idea of what we were looking at. So that challenge in its right is possibly easily fixed, though it's still expensive and it's timely. Getting the amount of lime onto that country takes time and money. So there is an opportunity there. There are lime deposits on the island. So within reason, we can address that issue. We just need to work more collaboratively as a group to make sure we can effectively get the lime crushed first and foremost. It's in quite a coarse form at the moment, which would take many, many years to break down. So there was a solution there, but identifying what the root cause of the issues was a fairly important part to do in those early discussions with the group.
And freight costs and freight costs for product and livestock, my apologies, is a huge proportion of the annual working expenses for farming on the Chathams. What has been in place in terms of collaborating around bulk buying of product in and the livestock shipments out, and where is a system to be improved on that?
Yeah, so it does make up an enormous part of the annual budget, and probably it's important to say, it's not only stock going off the island to be sold, in a lot of cases that's sold as store stock that means to go to the sale yard. Along with the shipping cost is also the cost of an agent fee, the cost of grazing for sort of up to a week once they get to New Zealand before they then go into the sale yard. So there's this whole barrage of costs that are built into selling one unit, so say it be one store lamb. And at the same time, that's the same with wool. Wool also has a expensive cost because it's fairly bulky in a bale form on the boat. So historically, there's a fair bit of collaboration in terms of sending livestock off the island. As boats have to be organised to make sure they are full enough to capacity to make sure that is efficient and effective for them to transport those stock. In terms of bulk buying into the island, it probably hasn't been looked at close enough, and I think that's a huge opportunity the group had identified in the first and second group on the island. And I think we're just trying to work with the company at the moment to look at how can we provide a platform for them so they can make that process quite simple in terms of selecting what products they need. A classic example is they're all coming up to docking and fly strike management, so everyone needs quite a quantity of products for first drench and fly strike treatment. So those types of aspects of it are the easy wins where we can see is can we collaborate how much product we need, and then can we get that at a reduced price, because there's very little margin we can make on reducing the freight costs onto the island.
And I really enjoyed reading about the historical vegetation maps that exist and the deep understanding of biodiversity in native woodlots already. I mean, it's harsh and exposed to the elements on the Chatham Islands. So how have you been able to harness what's already there and guide in direction to see the ETS as an opportunity?
Yeah, so I think I left the island after the first trip and scratched my head thinking, how can we make something out of nothing? Because there's always lots of opportunities that require quite a large capital spend. So the one thing I thought, we possibly have this opportunity that there's already some regenerating native that previously was cleared. There's already pockets of native vegetation that are quite mature, and there is also some pine and macrocarpet areas on a number of farms. So I went away, scratched my head for a while, and then thought, well, why don't we look at the ETS as an opportunity for farms that have existing woodlots, and then why don't we make sure that they're well aware of what they can do going forward if they want to plant out areas. And a lot of the coastal farms and a lot of the coastline there, they are exceptionally exposed to the elements. So a big part of my job, I have quite a high standard of welfare, so it was playing in how can we use trees, ETS, to actually have a benefit on the farming operation as well as an alternative income stream. So a number of those farmers actually had an opportunity to explore that ETS, and we engaged a company to help map the properties first and foremost, and then do the follow-on process of trying to get them set up in the ETS.
Wonderful. Congratulations, Ruby. Absolutely incredible work that you've done there by taking a concept, as you said, that was keeping you awake at night and following through on it to be the change that you wanted to see. And I'm sure the farmers on the Chatham Islands will be extremely grateful that you haven't come with the problem, you've come with the ability to work together for the solution. And that's absolutely incredible to see. So, yeah, on behalf of the audience at Sarah's Country, yeah, congratulations. Well done. What's the next step?
So we've still got a few visits, trying to squeeze them in before March, and the funding network then effectively stops. I think we are quite keen to keep something going, even if it is at sort of like a twice a year type visit arrangement. But yeah, we've got another couple of visits booked in. One of the next ones is going to be just looking around our performance of pastures and what we can actually do in terms of any new pasture pools or cropping options. They struggle with summer dries, as we all do. So yeah, I think there's still a little bit of work to do there. We definitely still need to keep some traction rolling with the lining options and also the bulk buying. So a lot of it, each group that rolls into the next group, and we try and keep things moving from there.
I think there'll be a lot of people that will be listening that might want to reach out where they could help from New Zealand. Ruby, is there a way that people can get in touch with you to bring the expertise and support?
Yeah, I'm more than happy for you to share my email address if that works. I guess the one thing probably to put out there is they actually struggle for employment around employing people to come and help over those key times of the year, especially shearing. There are still a large number of ewes on the island, so they do struggle every year to get good, competent shearers that want to go there and do a bit of work and get stuck in. So I think if there are people out there that have got skills in the shearing space or general fencing, there are definitely opportunities on the island, and you could definitely work in with a number of farming businesses to fill up your week and your month pretty quickly.
If putting my hand up to be a rousey is the way that I can get to the Chatham Islands, Ruby, I'll be in a heartbeat. Thank you so much, Ruby Mulinder there, who has taken the Red Meat Profit Partnership Action Network over to the Chatham Islands. And on the talking of struggling to get staff, this is an ongoing conversation. It is now being deemed an absolute crisis. Up next on the show, we're going to be talking to Chris Lewis, Dairy Industry Group's Chair for Federated Farmers, about the lack of people interested in DairyNZ's GoDairy campaign that has been scrapped. And where are we today in pressure on the government as the critical workers that we need into this country? It's becoming an animal welfare issue. Chris Lewis will be up with us very shortly here on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country. The recipe for perfect beef and lamb. Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass, all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. Taste pure nature.
I can always count on my old mate Jock Innes. He says, like many others, I've spent much time in the Haast area, hunting, jet boating, diving, flying, had many great jet boating adventures in the Arawata Valley. Can I just say, if you're watching that Taste Pure Nature TVC there before, the young woman in there is JJ Nolan's daughter, actually working out Mount Aspiring Station. What is a beautiful river. Yes, a couple of visits to the Whitebaiters Ball, real hope for sure. I had second day of my honeymoon in a small batch at Lake Brunner that my father organised through a friend. Oh hell, not a great honeymoon hideout. Everything was damp and wet. Possums galore, rats, you name it. Was not a great way to impress a new bride. I bet you that was a way that she snuggled in and grabbed you closer though, Jock, was it? I want to hear your thoughts on the places and experiences that you absolutely treasure on the West Coast. I have so many, and just reading Jock's there puts an absolute smile on my face in terms of the amount of flying and jet boating that I've done, and of course many horse rides on the beach and exploring around with friends. Wonderful people. We are talking about the West Coast because it's Ag Fest Friday and Saturday, the Farmlands Ag Fest, and it's such an awesome time to get over there and experience the last frontier, but at the same time one of the most forward-thinking, innovative, down-to-earth, practical, realistic parts of New Zealand. I absolutely love the coast. DairyNZ has decided not to continue with the GoDairy campaign, and it has shown how hard it is to recruit people into the dairy industry. DairyNZ has put the dairy training initiative on hold until March next year as it reviews the 3-week course and looks at the way it could be improved. Federated Farmers assisted DairyNZ in getting GoDairy up and running, while at the same time launching its own scheme to get more New Zealanders onto farm. We're joined now by Chris Lewis, Dairy Industry Group's Chair for Federated Farmers. Chris, this is a schmozzle.
Yeah, it is a bit frustrating. Back in March, when we started looking at GoDairy, we were seeing big predictions there's going to be unemployment going to 20%. Maybe back in those bad old days in March and April when the New Zealand economy is going to crash and we're all going to be out of work. So we thought, well, let's do a GoDairy campaign and do the honourable thing and get hard-working Kiwis working our farms and keep them off the dole. Well, the opposite's happened. Kiwis didn't get laid off. There's probably been layoffs in the tourism and hospitality, but there's a lot of migrant jobs there. But our hard-working Kiwis are still employed, and it's damn hard to find a good one to work on your farm or work on a body site.
But Chris, this seems like you're saying that this is something that was COVID driven. I was actually spending some time with a farm source TFO, and he went dairying for 8 years before his current role, purely because he saw a Go Dairying campaign that long ago, and he was in the hotel industry. Is this something that needs to continue to be there, existing very strongly in the background, and not blame COVID?
Yeah, it's. I remember it was 8 or 9 years ago. They had the Go Dairy campaign and a lot of TV ads, and we promoted agriculture as a great job. And you've seen probably in the last 6 months, there's been a lot of work from DairyNZ and lots of Federated Farmers promoting careers in farming, and it's actually helped with the people with the view what they have of agriculture, and it's changed people's views in towns. And just seeing all those good news stories, and I think it's something we should actually do year in, year out. And I'm pretty passionate about it. So, probably next year, February, March, is the main employment time or employing time for 1st of June. We'll probably see another big push on that. Hopefully we will.
Do you know what really grinds my gears, Chris, is when every single part of our industry individually to try to achieve the same thing without collaborating not only resources but experience to come together in one campaign. Why did Federated Farmers go out and do their own when DairyNZ had this underway?
Look, DairyNZ decided to go dairy. We supported them. Federated Farmers is not a training organisation. We're a political advocacy group. So what we did with our one was aimed at employers, and it's just for people who got jobs, who came from a COVID-19 situation. And ours was very simple to implement. It was very simple to administrate, but we made it very clear that we'll support DairyNZ. We gave them a good helping hand, but we're not a training organisation. It's not our bread and butter. And so sometimes you got to stick to your strengths and support from behind.
Yes. I hear what you're saying. Are you telling me that DairyNZ are not open to collaborating with the industry on this problem?
Well, no, we collaborated very openly with them, and behind the scenes was Dairy Women's Network and Young Farmers Club were behind the scenes. And actually every week on a Wednesday at 9 a.m, you'll find me on a conference call with those 4 organisations, and we talk about this stuff every week for an hour and about collaboration, who's doing what are we hearing. And it's driven by everyone. So behind the scenes, a lot of collaboration, but just at GoDairy, it was DairyNZ to lead, and we supported them on doing that because they were the right organisation to lead it from our perspective.
What in your mind do you believe a review and coming back in March around the 3-week course needs re-looked at, and what do you believe are those fundamental problems around attracting people into the industry?
Yeah, the fundamental problems of attracting is obviously the hours and obviously the days off, of course, and also pay, So in the last 5 years, even seems that likes myself, we've moved to a modern 6-on-2 off roster or 5-on-2 off roster. My staff get about 120 days off a year. Pay's increased a lot. And I think when the next Federated Farmers remuneration survey goes out, my gut feel is pay's gone up a lot in the last 6 months in agriculture, just to attract people. But it's not everything. A lot of employers are actually, a lot of us have actually got to become better employers and learn how to around people skills and how to interact with the younger generation. And it's something that doesn't come natural to all of us. Sometimes we're a bit gruff, sometimes we're a bit tired, or a bit, we're not always at 5 o'clock in the morning that pleasant. So it's something for all of us to work on to be better employers. And if a lot of us work hard on being better employers, the relationship with the employee will be a lot better. And it's something I've worked on a lot in the last 5 years. And, the average person who works on our farm stays here from anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Has been the average length of service on our farm for the last 10 years. But getting back to your question around GoDairy, what does it need improving on? Hey, they've learnt a lot when they did this. And it's nothing like actually testing the market and working out where you've gone right and gone wrong and getting all that feedback and sitting down and thinking, how do we make this better? And this is the challenge for the next few months, is to pull it apart, look at what worked well, what didn't work well, and putting a 2.0 model on board for next year. And that's the challenge. We have to do better. We need to attract better people, but we need employers to be attractive as well. So it's like any marriage, you got to put a bit of work into it, don't you? And so I've heard.
Oh, well, I'm not going to ask from who, Chris, but no, great analogy, absolutely. Hey, let's pivot to the conversation I had with Roger Parton. Things are bloody serious. There's no other way about it in terms of the serious gaps in the contracting workforce that is leading to consequences of animal welfare with feed shortages and getting those crops. If we have a dry summer and then, of course, leading into winter with baleage, what more can you do to smash on the door of farfoys?
Look, we've had quite a few conversations with him. He's a good person to deal with. He's quite pragmatic. But on the other hand, the government's got this issue around keeping COVID-19 out of the country, which is very, very important. And I think over the last few months, done a really good job with their quarantine hotels. They've managed to stop it in the quarantine if it's come into the country. They've tested. And I think they should have a fair bit of confidence that they can run this thing pretty well now. And if they've got the confidence now, why can't they upscale it? And there's plenty of hotels around here running empty, and there's plenty of people who can work in security, like obviously the Army's doing it now, but I see no reason why they can't do it. And the other thing I'd like to do is a shout out to Telford. They've done a lot around training for young people, especially tractor driving. They've had some good success on that. So we need more of the Telfords, more of those micro-credential type training happening around all the country. It should be happening in the Waikato, in the Manawatu. It should be a regionalised thing. And hey, there are hardworking Kiwis who want to get into farming, but we need to have the world-class training where it's local and there's no barriers to getting to it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Chris, I'm sure that you would have ventured down to your fellow former president Katie Milne's place and her tenure at Federated Farmers and enjoyed the hospitality of the West Coast. Did you get to do a bit of exploring, and what were some of your favourite memories of the coast?
Yeah, the last time I went there, Katie wasn't home. She was in Wellington, but we
does she know this?
She might not know this, actually. I think she did, actually. But we went and saw Renee Rooney and around Lake Brunner, and a few Feds people elected who live around Lake Brunner. What an amazing place. And it is beautiful. And Katie also showed me videos and photographs of it all the time. But when you see it in the flesh, it is outstanding. So I plan to come back again for another roadie of the West Coast, but bring my family and spend a few days there. And of course, being the Lake Brunner pub of Katie would be the highlight.
Oh, lovely. And actually, I need to give a bit of a shout out because Katie Milne is joining Anika Moa on Thursday night. I can't wait to be there. It's called Real Woman Talk. Could you imagine that, Chris? It's replacing the old ladies' night of Farmlands, and it's going to be an absolute hoot. And I know there's quite a great lineup of, let's say, shoot from the hip type females in the agriculture sector. So it's going to be fantastic. Hey, thank you so much, Chris. Keep up the good fight on behalf of rural New Zealand. You're doing an absolute fantastic job. Chris Lewis, not only dairy chair, but also, of course, employment spokesperson there for Federated Farmers. After the break, we're going to be talking about this Winter Grazing Action Group put into place after activist Angus Robertson flagged what was going on to his concern in July 2019. Lindsay Burton is the chair of this group, and there has been some expected short-term outcomes that are now expected for animal welfare. We're going to go through those with Lindsay very shortly here on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
Really pleased we got into this. Thanks for your help, Dave.
It's a good idea, honey. You reckon it'll come out? Cover it and tell compound to leave it 10 minutes, and you'll be fine. Good call, Dave.
Good call on getting those security cameras, Dave.
You caught a new one yet?
Yeah, kind of.
When you've got decisions to make, we'll be there to help you make the right call.
I'd go for those ones, Bob. Yeah, good call.
Did you choose these?
Oh, you know.
For great advice and insurance, talk to FMG.
The Winter Grazing Action Group was established in early 2020 at the start of this year, and they're made up of 15 representatives from industry organisations, government, vets, farmers and other rural professionals. It's tasked with implementing recommendations to improve animal welfare here in New Zealand in our winter grazing systems. The Winter Grazing Action Group is aware that farmers are looking for guidance to help them understand what may be coming down the pipeline into what will be current winter practices that will be acceptable as this task force comes about its recommendations. So we're joined now by Lindsay Burton, who's the chair of the Winter Grazing Action Group. Lindsay, I have here some short-term expected outcomes for animal welfare. We have to point out, though, this is not a legal minimum standard yet. Could you please give us a bit of an update on why the task force was formed and what type of conversations have come to the point of having at least some short-term expected outcomes?
Okay, so the original reason for the group being established was because there was a task force established by the minister originally, and that was to examine the key issues that surrounded intensive winter grazing. As a consequence of that, group report, which made a series of recommendations, the action group, which I chair, was established, and it is really giving effect to the recommendations from the original task force chaired by John Hellstrom. So the group was established in February this year, and it has come through initially, one of its key outputs has been the short-term expectations document that sets out for farmers clear understanding of what is expected. It is not regulation, nor is it intended to be regulation, but rather guidance information to achieve good farm practice when it comes to animals being grazed intensively.
And good practice, obviously not best practice, is being based on science and the recommendations of vets to achieve and improve the current animal welfare outcomes. There'll be a lot of farmers around New Zealand listening and watching right now, Lindsay, that say they're very aware of animal welfare over winter grazing periods. However, it's about bringing everyone along on this journey, isn't there? And I mean, our wintering systems have a lot to answer for. So let's work through these 7 outcomes and start with the ability to allow our animals here in New Zealand to give birth in the right environment. What do you mean by that exactly?
It means that the animals are able to lie down, give birth in a situation where in fact appropriate mothering can occur. And the intention with intensive winter grazing is not to have animals giving birth on crops, but rather be off crops. So clearly one of the key things to know is when animals are expected to calve, and to ensure that they're provided the right type of pasture or other system bases rather than on an intensive cropping situation.
And of course, as we continue to work through these 7 different outcomes, we do take on board that there is a lot of farmers around New Zealand that are not doing that, giving birth on crop. However, it is all about working together in this task force to get that. Moving on to the next one. This is something, especially with the freshwater regs and pugging, etc., where I have heard rhetoric from farmers saying, well, what about an adverse weather event? What is the task force's recommendation around preparation?
So it is clear that adverse weather events can occur from time to time. So you need to have very good plans in place. One, to anticipate what could occur. Secondly, to know what you're going to do should such an event occur. It may be shifting back fences, it may be giving extra breaks, but it is doing the things that most farmers are doing extremely well. So just like your mention of a lot of animals giving birth on crops, that is not the norm, and in fact, if the planning is right, that should be really occurring. And most farmers, if we look at what's actually happened this winter, have done extremely well to achieve that outcome. But there are some that need further plans in place to ensure that they get the right and expected outcomes.
And planning for winter feeding is something I've seen come a long way, especially in the last decade, in terms of planning out those breaks with that site baleage along the breaks as well. Are we seeing the ability to provide feed in the right places and getting our actual winter grazing management better sorted for the right nutrients?
I think we certainly have seen some very good farmers doing that historically, and we've seen rapid change occur with many, many farmers this year to ensure that they understand what plans they need in place, moving stock as required, and ensuring that the feed is accessible along with good access to water.
What type of recommendations, if you're an owner or a manager listening to this episode or this program right now, what I really enjoyed about this is setting up a bit of a system in the shed when you're having those health and safety meetings and those general farm management meetings to say, what are the opportunities to improve? Having that post-winter chat to sit down and go, what could we do differently?
Well, I think that's really important. I think it's an important exercise that should be going on all the time. As you review how things are going, and at the end of it, reviewing what one could have done better. There are many opportunities, not just within your own farming system, but also talking to rural professionals and other farmers to actually understand the lessons they've learned and the system changes they've made and what's worked and what may not have worked quite as well.
Lindsay, is 15 representatives across the industry, as we said there in the introduction. What type of feedback are you getting across the board in terms of general behaviour changes in industry and sort of that peer support around that as well? Because as I've continuously said on this program, all it takes is one photo to bring our industry down.
That's right. The industry support, along with MPI support, has been very, very good. Industry groups have made sure that a lot of the material that's required for farmers, the advice, is being provided to them, either by written material or through rural professionals or running workshops. So there's widespread industry support and widespread recognition of the changes that are required.
I mean, I tell you what, I'm not going to lie. I am not alone in saying you drive past some situations that are very much on a roadside and you think that is just straight out dumb. How are we absolutely going to be able to change that when these particular farmers may not attend the likes of an industry organisation event on better winter grazing? How do we bring the bottom up, do you believe?
I think that's a joint effort from a large number of people, including people that observe that situation, neighbours. All those groups need to actually participate and actively work with those that they believe may not be achieving what should be achieved, and being prepared to actually have those hard conversations from time to time. At the same time, they also need to be actually recognise those that are doing extremely well and complimenting on them. So I think there's two things that need to happen. We need to make sure we are communicating effectively with all the people in the industry, and that does mean driving up the driveway, which did occur this year on a number of properties, and just pointing out what the options were and what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable.
Okay, so these recommendations, short term, have been extended out to 2021. You're positive about what you've seen already so far in this winter. What does it look like after that? Are we seeing regulation? And if so, who will be the regulator?
So the regulations are currently around freshwater, and while there are some components in those freshwater regulations that can impact on winter grazing, like pucking and slope, the regulator here is really MPI if we're looking for compliance, but it's under the more general Animal Welfare Act. Regulations shouldn't be needed to actually create the right situations. They should be a point of last resort rather than regulating just for the sake of it. So what we're looking to do is provide the guidance material to follow that up, to investigate cases where in fact concerns are expressed by any member of the public and other farmers, and then review that post-2021 to see whether in fact there is any need for any more legislative tools than already exist under the Animal Welfare Act.
Lindsay, before we go, would you like to paint a picture for us of what success would look like on an average, say, Southland dairy farm in terms of winter grazing management in your eyes?
Thank you. I'll not just confine it to Southland because the issue is about intensive winter grazing right across New Zealand. So that's the first thing. The most important thing, though, is to ensure that the farmers actually have done a lot of planning. They've clearly identified what are the feed requirements of the animals, what are the shelter requirements of the animals. They've identified that they have animals known in terms of stage of pregnancy. And success will then look like them following those plans and also responding in situations like adverse weather events appropriately so the animals are well fed and that their basic welfare needs are met.
No, thank you for clarifying that. Absolutely. It was just an example, and it is extended nationwide in terms of the short-term outcomes that the Minister wants to see in terms of us having an absolutely incredible winter grazing practice that we can hang our hat on globally. Lindsay Burton joining us there as the chair of the Winter Grazing Task Force Action Group that he put into place. And you may remember from a particular protest from an Angus Robertson a couple of years years ago. And look, everything is improving into the right direction. I think everybody in New Zealand all wants a positive animal welfare outcome. It's just how we achieve it. After the break, we're going to be talking to Daniel Ebb. You may remember in March, pre-lockdown, we had a very successful open farms nationwide, and of course because of that it is set for 2021. This is an ability for urban Kiwis to connect with farmers and growers and learn more on farm of how we produce in this country. Also, Daniel was recently named as a 2021 Nuffield Scholar, so he will be joining us very shortly on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.
If you just joined us live on Sarah's Country, of course, daylight saving does that. You're making the most of it. Good on you. So you should be. But of course, for tens of thousands that listen on demand on podcast, we do take into account that it could be any time of day. We have a first-time commenter. Brett, welcome. You can't stop pugging mud if you have 100 to 200 mils of rain. Doesn't matter how much room, moving them or shifting the back fence. 100% agree, Brett. Planning for adverse events is all well and good saying it, but when you live and breathe it every day, I mean, it's not that easy to plan for, is it? Try telling the government to plan for a pandemic. James Bryan, great to see you there in the comments, bro. Nice work, Ruby. Seems so similar to where I've been working in the Falkland Islands. Soil types and challenges faced by the farmers. I think there's a challenge, James. I'm going to get you on Sarah's Country to talk about your time in the Falkland Islands because I think that was really cool. And a very good friend, Andrew Bendel, is over there now. Actually, it'd be quite good to tune in with Andrew and see how he's getting on. Michael Ross, as always, fantastic suggestions. We're talking about border controls needing more staff. And importantly, he says trained medical staff. What about the idea of running isolation facilities offshore in the country of origin of these workers? Where do you even begin with that, Michael? I hear what you're saying, though. And Jock carrying on about the hospitality of the West Coast, saying it should not be understated. Someone will always help when things go wrong, especially a broken down jet boat. And a special mention to the Saxtons, a very welcome place to stay. Absolutely, 100% agree with you there, Jock. They'd give the shirt off their back. Now, you'll all be pleased to know that urban Kiwis are going to get that experience again on where their food and fibre is produced with the incredible initiative that was super successful this March called Open Farms. It's New Zealand's nationwide Open Farm Day, and it will be on the Sunday, 21st of February 2021. Into its second year, the Grassroots Initiative supports farmers to host these open days for urban Kiwis. The first event ever saw 3,500 people visit 45 farms across the country. This is off the back of the successful initiative in the UK, ranging from high country sheep stations to permaculture orchards, dairy farms, and even an indoor microgreens producer in central Wellington. And of course, the project founder Daniel Ebb joins us now. Daniel, I mean, we talked about it post the event, about its great success, but in a year that has been with COVID-19, bringing a connection like no other to how food is produced and the importance of farming on our community, it must be just so rewarding, the snowball effect of connection.
It is, Sarah, and kia ora. Yeah, I mean, what a year it's been. I mean, I think we've heard enough about that, but you're right. It's almost forced people to build a different relationship with their food. So I think Open Farms coming in February is basically coming at the right time, because it's one thing to see your supermarket shelf maybe not stock the items that you're normally used to seeing, but that's kind of like a handbrake on this sort of what could be quite a weird relationship with food and farming. It's not something that's a relationship between you and the supermarket. It's a relationship between you and a farmer. So we finally pulled the handbrake. Now we're going to put the car in a different direction and get people back on farm.
For those who have just joined us in Sarah's Country's journey and haven't heard that interview from earlier in March, can you just explain around what happens on an open farm day?
Sure. It is a very, very simple concept. Open farm days aren't new. We haven't created anything that's particularly different. What we've just tried to do is streamline the process. And so what we mean by that is we've made it as easy as possible for farmers to host an open day. So we've gone ahead and answered all the questions that they might have. So what about health and safety? What do I tell my insurance company? What activities do I put on? We've got a list of 50 activities that we've scoured from around the world that farmers can choose from. So we've tried to reduce all of the barriers that farmers might have to hosting an open day. And then we also make it really easy to do all the marketing and registration. We do all that through a central brand. And then the end result is simple. We just get urban Kiwis, many of them who have never been on a farm or have been on a farm once for a school trip 25 years ago, back on farm. And then we kind of let the experience do the rest. That's, seeing animals in moving through the yards is something that, or like experiencing sort of the buzz of a wool shed, is stuff that huge chunks of our population and our society don't experience. So we create that experience, or we help farmers to create that experience.
Because those in urban New Zealand only know what they know, and we absolutely take our knowledge for granted in farming, and just being able to see those people interacting and ask those questions is something super unique from my experience of being there in March here in Canterbury. Daniel, but one thing that really struck me was the level of intelligent questions that people were asking to the farmers. The people that turned up certainly really had a very strong base knowledge. Do you think we underestimate urban New Zealand?
I think we do. I work in marketing, and the worst thing that your brand or organization can be is irrelevant. It's hard to sell shoes or smartphones, or maybe not smartphones. It's incredibly relevant, but it's hard to sell anything. But food is easy to sell because it matters so much to us. Like if you're a mum, or anyone, the food that you eat or the food that you give to your kids is a reflection of who you are as a parent. It's a reflection of who you are as a person. It's massively important. And so it makes sense then that if people have this deep, intimate connection with their food, or want to have this deep, intimate connection with their food, they're going to start asking questions. And as a sector, we shouldn't be put off by that, even if they are hard questions, because people have a right to know where their food comes from, how it was grown, the environmental conditions in which it was grown, who it was that actually grew the food. And so I think what we're trying to do with open farms is give people an avenue to build on that inquisitiveness and curiosity in a way that's really constructive, because we know there's so much information out there, some misinformation out there as well about food and farming. There's only really one place to learn the truth, and that's at the source. And that's a farmer telling you, well, these are the practices that we do. So yeah, some of them you might not like, but these are the reasons why we do them. If we can do this, this, and this in the food system, maybe we can change the practices, but we've got to do that together. And so I've been labelled relentlessly positive, but I think that's kind of the way we got to go. We've got to go at this together. And so we try and build a platform to do that.
Daniel, absolutely own it. I get exactly the same thing. Too open-minded and too optimistic. But
they know, right?
Exactly, absolutely. But we are trying to move forward collectively, because change is coming and demand is coming from our consumers, and this is a fantastic way to be able to do that. I have a question here from one of our earlier guests who put this to me after we went off air, Mr. Chris Lewis. He wants to know how we can utilise the platform of open farms to fix this employment crisis.
Okay, that's a good question. I haven't got a good answer for that, I'll be deadly honest with you. I think it's part of the mix. It kind of goes back to almost the founding insight of open farms was some MPI research in 2018 that 60% of urban New Zealanders have no friends or family and effectively don't visit rural New Zealand. So that's a huge barrier. If the goal is on one end to bring people back into our food and farming story and fix an employment issue, the initial barrier is they're not even going there. They don't even have it as part of their yearly routine. So I think opportunities like this where I mentioned kind of pulling the handbrake before, like if you put yourself in the shoe of, I live outside of Auckland. If you put yourself in the shoe of an Aucklander, their life is traffic jams Monday to Wednesday. Maybe they work from home on a Thursday if they're lucky. Supermarkets, smartphones, concrete, pop down the pub here and there. It's a completely different lifestyle from how many rural New Zealanders live. And I think step one to sort of making that pitch to, hey, come and live a rural lifestyle, be part of the food and farming story, is literally to pluck people out of their daily routine and put them in something that's new and different and unique and personal to them, and special. I'm very interested from an Open Farms perspective as to how we can basically layer on top of the platform and maybe try and solve some of these recruitment issues.
I think that whoever is listening or viewing around the world live or on demand on the podcast, there will be a lot where there's some light bulb moments will be going off listening to this right now. And I challenge you to be the change that you want to see. Get in touch with Daniel Ebb on Open Farms. Just simply Google it. You'll find his contact details because there is ways that we can layer on top of this concept and really harness this for all of our problems that we see across the sector. Daniel, before you go, congratulations on being named a 2021 Nuffield Scholar. Chris Parsons joined us last week to share this. No mean feat, mate. There's a lot of applications, down to 5.
Yeah, well, I think I feel very privileged to be in what is a very special group of people. So very excited to see what happens next year. But yeah, I've been called a little bit of a red herring because I'll be honest, I'm not quite a farmer, but hopefully I can bring a few urban perspectives and skills to the game.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Daniel. And for those listening, you have plenty of time to get your head around Open Farms. There's no excuse in year 2, Daniel. Am I correct? In terms of getting your ideas and what you can do on your farm. When will registrations open and information on how to sign up?
Registrations are open now. Head on through. We've put the whole host handbook basically up online. The questions are there. Get in touch if you've got any others. But yeah, we'll help you through it. It's not just you doing this. It's a partnership between Open Farms and our farmer hosts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel Ebb, project founder of Open Farms. I don't know about you, but I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed the guests on tonight's show, and a really great consistent theme that it's not about reinventing the wheel necessarily. It's about bringing people around the table to share ideas and with open mind and open hearts. And that's what I absolutely love doing on Sarah's Country. Of course, produced in alliance with the fantastic team at Farmers Weekly. Absolute privilege to be with you tonight. On behalf of my team, thank you for tuning in and sending through those emails. I certainly get all of them. Sarah@sarahscountry.com. Hopefully you can spell that with my very Kiwi accent. Of course, on social media as well, you can get in touch with us. And I love hearing about the topics that you want to hear about because this show is all about you. For those that care about the matters that matter most, to farming, food and fashion at the bottom of the world, an absolute paradise. We'll be back live 7 o'clock tomorrow night to end the week with another lineup of fabulous guests. And in the meantime, good night and go well.
This is Sarah's Country.